Any tips on finding the main arguments? I would say look at the stakeholders, so who are the people involved, and think about the perspective from their side. So over the past couple of weeks, I've answered your section A and section B questions from Instagram. Thank you so much for helping us get to 1,700 followers on Instagram. If you're not following us, our goal this week is to try to get up to 1,800 followers. So give us a follow there because we're giving some really good advice over there, especially in preparation for your exams. Today, we're going to be covering your questions for section C, and I had so many questions for section C. So today I'm going to change it up and do rapid fire answers to all of your different questions. Are we giving 2 texts or 1? I don't know. Nobody knows, apart from probably the examiners themselves who've written up the piece, so prepare for both. Simono Crovelli goes, any tips on finding the main arguments? I would say look at the stakeholders, so who are the people involved, and think about the perspective from their side. So for example, if you have a business person who's ready to put in an apartment block versus somebody who owns a farm and they don't want their farmland being taken away from them, I think about these 2 different people's perspectives and think about what the author is arguing. The author will often either argue from the perspective of the business person side or from the perspective of the farmer's side. Carly Harris asks, annotating and planning quickly. 100%, you do not have much time in your 3 hours to actually spend annotating and planning. So when it comes to analyzing argument, I develop systems for yourself that you know work. So for example, for me, what I really like to do as I was actually annotating was to highlight certain ideas in different colors. So let's use that example again about the businessman versus the farmer. If the author portrayed the businessman really poorly, every time I picked that up, I'd highlight the equivalent examples and evidence in pink. And then for the farmer, if the author portrayed them in a positive light, I'd highlight it in, say, a yellow color. So that way, when I looked on the page, it was really easy for me to see, okay, this is how much I can write about the businessman, this is how much I can write about the farmer, here are the different types of techniques I'll be using. It was just like a nice visual way for me personally to actually break down the information. What I encourage you to do is kind of find formulaic ways in the way that you go about things and start practicing them so that you can refine them over time and also speed up the way that you do these certain processes so that when you actually come to the exam, it comes very much as second nature. How long roughly should we aim to write for this section? You can watch my video over here where I break down how I actually wrote 3 essays in 3 hours, but the golden time is around 50 to 55 minutes. That way you have an extra 5 or so minutes to proofread and to have also used that for your planning ahead of time. Poolin Star Poster says, how to structure an opinion piece? Well, you're not writing an opinion piece for the exam, are you? Because that's not right. If you're thinking about oral presentations and you're creating an opinion piece for that, then go and check out any one of my other oral presentation videos. But otherwise, whatever form the author's writing in, if it's a letter to the editor, if it's an editorial, if it is an opinion piece, shouldn't affect how you structure your essay. Do you have to include stakeholders in the introduction? That's actually completely up to you. I don't think there's usually any formalities around that. I think the better question to ask is what value do you give your examiners by including the stakeholders in your introduction? If it is a crucial piece in what you're saying in terms of your contention, then yeah. But if not, and you're just doing it for the sake of ticking it off, then probably not, because you're going to be talking about them later anyway. Can we only have 3 body paragraphs, or does it depend on the amount of arguments? It's up to you how you want to structure your essay. So you can either go ahead with a more traditional essay structure. We have introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and then a conclusion. Or you can go about it with a more flexible approach where you decide to group each argument into a new body paragraph. And so in that case, usually what you might see is you might have 3, but 4, and maybe even sometimes up to 5 body paragraphs. Is a conclusion necessary? If so, how do you recommend we structure it? So a conclusion is not necessary. Argument analysis is a little bit different in the sense that different schools say different things in terms of the conclusion, but the general consensus is that it's a good idea to have one, but you don't absolutely need to have one. If you do go ahead and structure it, what I like to do is conclude my own essay conclusion using the author's conclusion in their article. So that's a little bit of a handful, but I actually teach this in my How to Write a Killer Language Analysis study guide, so you can go and check that out if you're interested in learning more. But essentially what you want to do is not just summarize what you've you've written, because that can get quite boring. You don't want to say things like, this person uses so many language techniques. Like, we get that. We've been talking about language techniques the entire essay, you know? So you don't need to repeat what is redundant. So instead, I try to wrap it up nicely by talking about how the author summarizes their essays in my own conclusion. How to structure an argument analysis. So we mentioned before, you have introduction, X number of body paragraphs, from like 3 to 5 body paragraphs, let's say, and then a conclusion. Generally, you want to use ideas for each of your body paragraphs. So what are the main ideas that your author is persuading you on? Now, if you're doing 2 articles or even 3 articles, which is unlikely, but you know, let's just say that if that is the case, then you may want to include some comparison points throughout your body paragraphs as well. And I know you'll be asking, so no, comparisons are not mandatory in your exam, though I personally of the school of thought that you should include some elements of it just to showcase, you know, your exceptional skill and the fact that you know how to make some comparisons. But if you really struggle with comparing, then don't feel like you need to do it just because you feel like it's gonna help you score better, because I'd rather you do it right and be confident in what you're doing. What's the most efficient way to study for section C? This is gonna be different for every single person, but the main points would be to analyze plenty of different articles. Think about analyzing 1 article versus 2 articles versus 3 articles. Think about your weaknesses as well. So if you struggle to analyze images, find practice exams that have images or cartoons or things like that to really test your knowledge and your skill set. Do planning as well. So actually time yourself planning and annotating your section C essay and really time that and really get it to that right amount of timing that you know you need in your exam so that you have time to do the other essays. Just a reminder here that more is not necessarily better. So just churning out essays is not what's necessarily going to help you boost your marks. Think about what areas of improvement you need to make for yourself and start working on those things. I know it's hard, but it's what's actually going to make the difference in your learning. Kate Simmons asked, what's the most effective way to revise? So we've covered some of the ways you can revise leading up to the exam for argument analysis, but if you want a more holistic overview of how you should be preparing for your exam for section A, B, and C in the lead up, then we've got our LSG exam workshops, which you should hopefully know about. Go check it out. Once you purchase it, you get immediate access to all of our videos to help you prepare for your exam. The other thing I will add here is we've actually just opened up and expanded our offering to tutor year 9 and year 10 English students. So if you know anybody who's in year 9 and year 10 who needs to get that extra help, please let them know that we're offering help now. Or if you're somebody who's in year 9 and 10 or you're a parent, then we've got a form down below for you to fill out and we can get in contact with you to start assisting you ahead of ECE. And lastly, our live Q&A is next Thursday night. Me and Peggy will be jumping on board, answering any of your final questions in preparation for the exam if you're in year 12. So make sure you're subscribed. I'll chat to you guys next week. Bye.